and welcome to another GraphCMS Talks. Today we're talking to Irina Reitz from Paragon, talking about building resilient tech stacks for a digital economy. Irina, I would love for you just to introduce yourself a little bit and kind of give us an insight about what you do at Paragon.
Yeah, thanks, Emily. So I'm a software developer at Paragon. I do like the general stuff of software development all in web. So that's basically what Paragon is passionate about. We're doing a lot of open source, workshops, community events, so all the fun stuff in web. And recently we got GraphCMS partner, so that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So Paragon is one of our implementation partners, and they do some great work for us. So today we're going to be talking about the building resilient tech stacks, like I mentioned, and I'm really excited about this topic, and I'm curious to hear all of your insights. So are you cool if we just go ahead and dive in?
Sure.
Great. Okay, so first, to kind of lay the foundation, how would you define resilient tech stacks?
Yeah, good question. When thinking about resilient, I kind of have to think about what does it really mean, and maybe I would say it's robust, durable, but also sustainable in a few different senses of the word. Economically as well as environmentally, I would say. So in the long run. And in general, it would be to keep the balance between adapting cutting-edge technology, which will be future-proof, but also evaluating their persistency. So new stuff, cutting-edge stuff isn't always really persistent. Mm-hmm. But then resilient tech stacks would be, like in definition, as little moving parts as possible in the front end, like state-of-the-art. Jamstack would be such a thing, I guess. Mm-hmm. The trade-off is often that you can save all of the moving parts because when you don't have in the front end, you will have like longer build time or development time, I would say. But then you would just need a proper versioning of APIs, packages to be like resilient and future-proof. Mm-hmm. And I guess static site generators and also headless CMS are like perfect use case for this.
Yeah, I think that's really an interesting point that you mentioned of like trying to find the balance between all of the exciting new technologies that are coming out and stuff that will actually be around for a long time, making sure that you have not too much of really exciting stuff that doesn't get enough community traction to be able to continue to be developed or something like that. I think that's a really good point that you make. So thinking about as an implementation partner, what are some of the most important considerations you make when deciding how to build the ideal architectures for clients?
I guess in the first place, I would say we have to accept that there might be not the ideal architecture of stuff. Probably we have to aim for like a good architecture or like the best architecture in that sense. And also maybe have to accept that we have to work also in an architecture in an agile manner. So I guess that's often like lost in the process maybe. Mm-hmm. But in general, I think the biggest considerations revolve around like the client. So does it fit to their needs, their size, their background? Do we have like depending third-party services and like, yeah, all the points that have to apply there, like good documentation for resilient, like are they resilient? Mm-hmm. Will be there in the long run. Can we implement stuff or like, can we not implement stuff and use other services for authentication? So it wouldn't often make sense to build it yourself. Mm-hmm. And then have like in the next step, what's the client's needs? Do we need SEO or do we do a backend, whatever application? Yeah, yeah. And should it be interactive? Do we need a special data privacy stuff? And if you want like to build for the next years, like a greener future, I would say also what are aspects of sustainability you could apply, hosting like on a green server or thinking about server capacity and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think this is kind of a broad question if you don't have the specific use case. Everything varies so much, but having all of these kind of broad considerations in mind, I think are really helpful for framing, okay, before I'm evaluating, what do I need to make sure that what kind of information do I need to make sure I'm getting from the clients and that kind of stuff. So diving in a little bit more specifically, what are some tips for companies migrating from a monolith-heavy infrastructure to a more resilient modular tech stack?
Yeah, I think maybe monoliths can be resilient too, but being on that base, like usually I noticed a lot that monoliths are like their history is long, and so they can't be like really error prone, but doesn't have to be. But in general, I would say if we want to move to a microservice tech stack, I would start in the peripheral area, because maybe there I would have like singled out components where I can test my stack, and also it's not that near to the core and like really important services. And then once I have that, I maybe have gained a good understanding of all the contracts between my services and can implement like step by step with confidence the next parts.
Yeah, exactly. That makes a lot of sense. Not wanting to start with all of your money-making application that's essential to your business, but rather starting with something that maybe is off to the side and then seeing kind of as a POC sort of thing, how that works, and then moving more to the more critical text services.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. So thinking about when you're adopting a new channel or a new use case, this kind of goes off of what we were just talking about. What are the specific factors that teams with resilient tech stack should evaluate?
So probably I would go ahead and see what's in place. So if it's not a greenfield project, I would have to, or they would have to look what's working, what isn't, what's the base that can build on. On a greenfield project, that's where I would start, like building the solid base, setting up like conventions, so you can go ahead and just make a streamlined progress of all your tech decisions. So build on reliable and modern libraries, and what elements of the infrastructure can be sustainable, and like all that thoughts, I would say. Yeah, and I guess like considerations for the architecture are always like, what's the scope of the microservices, building code conventions, communication protocols are always an important part, and all this needs to be clarified and at best documented in a nice way. So you can go ahead.
Yeah, documentation is always a work in progress, though.
Yeah, true.
So how can you be sure that this tech stack that you're building won't need any refactoring or rebuilding in the short term?
I think it depends a bit what a short term would mean, but as I would like interpret it is, so you can make plans, but maybe they're just plans, and you will have to adapt them in the end. But then I would say you have to trust your experience and gut feeling, and you have like some tools at hand that can make a base for that, I guess. So like an agile workflow with really time to do the features right, and not just make like a POC and then think, oh, we have to touch that again eventually. Either way. And like code reviews are, I guess, vital. So you get a knock on your hand from a colleague if you're building something that might be touched in the next month. and also like the code conventions again. So if you have like good code conventions in place, I think like small errors that have to be refactored soon can't be implemented that easily. And yeah, for that, I guess we will need to have as much information as possible for these steps before, and like iterate over them again and again. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you mentioned, it's hard to plan for that kind of stuff. You can do all of the planning that you want, but at the end of the day, sometimes you do just have to go back and refactor. So just making sure that you have a team that's able to work agilely and think about the problems quickly and that sort of thing, I think is really important.
Yeah, like if I think about it, maybe also if you're thinking about the third-party services, like sometimes you implement a nice new feature with, I don't know, a nice cool library, which takes a lot of the weight off of your work. But then you should think about, okay, of course, when selecting that thing, you might have a vendor lock-in at some point, and you also have to prove that the libraries are also there, like in the long run, and not have to be refactored in short notice, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. So being very careful with the tools and services that you select, I think, is also a key element of that, making sure that they'll be around, like you said.
Yeah.
Great. So finally, what are just some tips you have for ensuring that companies are looking at the right pieces of data or the right pieces of information to make sure that their tech stacks end up being reliable and sustainable?
So when thinking about metrics, I would, like besides uptime and user adoption, I would think also like really in the next years, like the sustainable aspect. So I see that upcoming a lot in recent years, but it gains traffic, I guess, each day. So in sense of environmentally friendly. So what are the energy sources of my servers? Can I do it more static so I don't have like a lot of energy or computation on the client? What's the performance also? Like it's a bit of, plays a bit into the user adoption thing, but a good performing application will also be more widely adopted, I guess. And I think it needs to be fast, just thinking about the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think we will just have to talk to clients and developers, because they're like closest to the thing. So to the clients, is the service seen as reliable? And the developers are like, they're on the code base every day. So they can really say, is it economically sustainable? Yeah, because they just have the closest insights on the service and can probably see if it's durable on the long run. Yeah. And then we will also be on the third-party services again, I guess. What's the customer support? Because especially in web and JavaScript, you have all those great libraries, but yeah, it's often a pain to evaluate. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, no, I totally understand what you mean. I think it's also kind of interesting to think about like what the developer experience is and if they actually enjoy working with it. And if it's too frustrating or it's not, you can't get in touch with the different people who are working for the services and that kind of stuff, that can already disqualify a tool in many circumstances, even if it is a great tool and has a lot of offerings.
Yeah, I like a best case would be that they gain traction in the long run and like build a solid base and have a good community. But unfortunately, that's sometimes an issue. But let's hope.
Yeah, exactly. Well, do you have any final thoughts on the topic of resilient tech stacks?
I'm excited for the future, I guess, because I think there's like with the sustainable aspect and like the Jamstack, there have been a lot of changes in the last years, like a bit back to the roots, I would say, with the Jamstack building static sites. Yeah, I'm curious to see if we're getting greener projects then too, because I see that a lot right now. And I think that should be like in the resilient package. Yeah, so I'm curious and excited.
Yeah, definitely. I think especially with the idea of sustainable tech stacks and sustainability for tech in general, it'll be very interesting to see how it all develops in the next couple of years.
Definitely, yeah.
Well, great. Thank you so much for having this GraphCMS Talks with us, Irina. It's been really a pleasure. And looking forward to seeing what you guys are working on next at Puragon.
Yeah, thanks for having me and us. Nice topic.
All right. Have a good one.
Yeah, you too. Bye.